We have this incredible Parsha Shlach, Rabbi, as we move towards finals and we wrap up the year. And Shlach is a Parsha that almost on every level underscores the principle of Riyah, of seeing, of using your eyes and putting them in the right places instead of the wrong places. And more than just putting them in the wrong places or the right places, when you put them in the right place, and when you're looking at the thing that maybe you should be looking at, how do you internalize that experience? What kind of person are you? How do you take in life? You know, they say about my Rebbe's Rebbe, Rabbi David Leibowitz, who's a very close Talmud of the Alter Stulberger. And certainly when you think about Gedolei Hador, you think about intensity of learning, you think about unbelievable dedication to Torah, to Yiddishkeit, to people, tremendous chesed. And all that certainly was true about Rabbi David Leibowitz, Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz, who's the Rebbe of so many of us here at Valley Torah. His father, who was a close Talmud of the Alter Stulberger, who literally goes back to the 19th century, those things were certainly true about him. But the Yeshiva stressed a very interesting little story about Reb David that you think doesn't belong in the stories about Gedolei. And apparently the Yeshiva told us this story about Reb David Leibowitz because he wanted us to know that godless doesn't just talk about intensity of learning, it doesn't just talk about davening with tremendous holiness and being an incredible Jew. There's another dimension to godless. And I think he was sharing to greatness. There was another dimension he was trying to share. He said that my father had an incredible curiosity about life. He wanted to take things in. And he shared with us, and again this goes back to the 1920s where actually fixing a flat tire was a big deal. Where cars were probably new on the scene altogether. And when you had a flat tire, you actually took the jack out, you actually fixed it. It was not something that was a natural occurrence. And he said when my father was walking down the street, he saw this individual who was fixing his tire and pulling up the car and putting a new... He stopped and he looked. And he took it all in. And I think he was trying to tell us that this is really one of the marks of a gadol. Is that if a person has the eyesight to say, what is happening here? Or curiosity. A curiosity to take life in. To look at what's going on around them. To try to find ways to inspire oneself. Because you never know. The one thing you do know is if you're locked into some small box where your mind can't go anywhere other than what you're looking at from a very narrow perspective, you're going to miss so much of life. So much is going to walk right by you. And I'm not knocking any of the kids who said, this, I understand, you didn't know what Bryce Canyon looked like. You didn't know, you took a little perspective from the ATV, you saw a little bit from the horseback riding, and I can see people say, it's a big hole in the ground, and I want to play Fortnite instead of going to see Bryce Canyon. And I'm not putting it down. I truly believe that when you guys answered the question that I'd rather play Fortnite than go to see Bryce, 6 o'clock on the Wednesday, when we went to Bryce, we had that incredible inspiration point that truly was inspiring. But it sort of shows you something. So I'm sure after the fact, after all of you who voted for Fortnite over inspiration point, after you walked out of that bus and you looked at what you were looking at, and you hopefully took it in, and you hopefully recognized, as somebody mentioned to me, so what? What do you say about this? 55 billion years of water going through the canyons and this and that? Yeah, you could look at it. You could go through life that way. You can look at all the wonders of the world and sort of say, the Big Bang that's just the way it all ended up. Just so all kind of came on, just sort of landed on everything. And that's how the whole depot blew up and all the metal came tumbling down and it happens to produce... What?
It's a word of Fortnite. Yeah.
No, I'm not referring to that. Sorry. Okay. And it all came tumbling down, and what emerged was this super the supercomputer with 14,000 nuances for every square inch of its capabilities, and you've got anybody would have said it would have taken a team of 1,000 people a year to put this computer together, and I'll tell you, no, that's not how it happened. You're making a big mistake. It just happened to just all come together after the explosion. Or like the Gemara says, you take a big vat of ink and you pour it out on a long stream of parchment. And you ask yourself, how did this Sefer Torah get here? And you say, that's how it happened. This beautiful Sefer Torah, somebody took a big vat of ink and poured it out on the parchment, and that's what took place. You say, of course, stop taking me alone. Tell me how this Sefer Torah got there. Rabbi said there are people who can go through life looking at the wrong thing at the wrong time. Maybe not knowing when to put down the book and versus when to pick it up. Not being able to take things in. Rabbi said, the idea of vision, the idea of looking. You have to have a certain curiosity. You have to have a certain receptivity. The neshama has to be ready to take in the messages of what goes on around them. The first Rashi in Shalach is a mind-blowing Rashi. This parasha, unfortunately, reminds us of the incredibly horrific episode of the Meraglim. It reminds us of what happens when God forbid we don't have the proper trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we're sort of not ready to get that inspiration and take it in and recognize I'll be talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and trust in Hashem that we're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So what happens? We know what happens. They come back, they give a negative report. The Jewish people start crying. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you cry a bechiyah shel chinam, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the night of Tisha B'Av. You cry a vain cry. You cry for nothing because you don't trust in me. You don't believe I can bring you into Eretz Yisrael. I'll give you a reason to cry. And every single Tisha B'Av throughout the tragic years of our Golus has been connected to that Tisha B'Av. So we are still, in a sense, Rabbi says, suffering for that Aveira. A horrific Aveira of not trusting in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You'd say that would be, on the Richter scale of sins, this would be like one of the really big ones. You don't trust, you don't believe you're going to come into Eretz Yisrael. God takes you out of Mitzrayim. He gives you a Torah in our Sinai, and you don't believe He's going to take you into Eretz Yisrael. You don't believe He can pull it off. Yet Rashi says, why is the Parsha of Meraglim? Ask this question at the Shabbos table. When somebody that says, well, tell me something on the Parsha. Instead of saying, no, we don't learn Parsha in Valley Torah, try this one. Have them reflect on what this Rashi is saying. Would you ever say to a fellow who is about to be convicted for armed robbery or murder or treason, you know what? It's really sad you made this terrible, tragic mistake. You have to sit the rest of your life in prison. In fact, you might even be eligible for the death penalty. You might be so guilty that your tongue might have to come out of your body and slowly rot away and kill you slowly but surely. That's how bad you are. But I really feel bad for you. You know why? Because you didn't have to do this. A week before, somebody was jaywalking. And somebody got a ticket. And you saw it. Let's make it speeding. Somebody was speeding. And you saw it, and you saw the cop pull the guy over. And you saw that when you don't do something right, you get punished. You'd say, and you didn't learn from that lesson? You didn't learn to listen to the law? You didn't learn to listen that when people give you direction, you should follow? If the judge would say that to somebody, he'd say the judge is out of his mind. You're talking about a very bad individual. Why are you talking about speeding when you're comparing speeding to armed robbery, speeding to murder, speeding to treason? What's the connection? And Rashi says that exactly that kind of analogy. He says the reason why the Meraglim come right after the Parsha of Miriam. Baloscha ends with the Parsha of Miriam. Baloscha ends with the fact that Miriam spoke Lashon against Moshe Rabbeinu. Guys, you know very well, we've spoken about it a number of times. Miriam's sin against Moshe Rabbeinu was the most infinitesimal, subtle sin. It involved a woman and a man, Aaron and Miriam, two holy people who really wanted what was best for Tzipporah. They weren't looking at and interested in speaking Lashon Hara. Says Rashi, you should have learned from them. They spoke and they got saras. So before you opened your mouth, you should have spoken. You should have thought about it before you spoke. You who are about to do the most horrific Avera would have actually not done the Avera had you taken the message from Miriam and Aaron. What does that say to you? It says, Rabbi says, if you stop and reflect, again, all of these things only work when you stop and you think and you internalize and you focus. What is it saying? What it's saying is sometimes the smallest inspiration, the smallest recognition of, I better watch my mouth. From Miriam, I learned I better watch my mouth. That small moment of recognition and clarity, a week, 2 weeks, a month later, when you're about to open your mouth and speak about Eretz Yisrael, and you're about to say, we can't do this, we can't conquer this land. You might say, whoa, wait a minute. Let me learn from Miriam. You're about to do something so much worse. Why would Miriam have an impact upon you? The answer is it could. And it does. And if we take things in and we see, we really see what's happening. Rashi says, they saw what happened, they didn't take the mussar, they didn't take the message, they didn't take the lesson. They saw, but they didn't get inspired. I've heard people get off at the Grand Canyon, say, okay, there's a big hole in the wall, whole big hole in the ground, let's just go. Yeah, you can say that. You can be at the top of Vernal Falls, okay, well, can we have lunch already? I mean, hello, do you see what you're looking at? Do you see the world? Do you see the Yad Hashem? You see this incredible, miraculous situation that is mind-blowing in its beauty and its grandeur? And all you're worried about is lunch? How can it happen, Rabbi Simon? Rov alach musar. At the end of the day, the biggest sin, according to Rashi and the Meraglim, they didn't take the messages of life. We had a funeral it was on Monday, I believe. Monday or Tuesday. A funeral this week of my neighbor, who was a very, very special lady, passed away. Sally Cass passed away this week. And she, probably if somebody had actually written down all of the stories from the concentration camps and the war, and her incredible journey in life, it would have not filled up one column, probably 2 columns of books on a shelf. How amazing her life was. She survived things that you'd say could never be survived during the horrors of what the Nazis did, Yamach Shalom, to the Jewish people. But she survived. What was amazing about something that she would always say that after the war, when she finally was liberated, something that her father told her about 5 years earlier, before he left, never to return, before he went on those cattle cars to his death, he said to his daughter, Sally, Rivka was her name at that point. She came to America and she became Sally, but her name was Rivka. And the father said to her, listen, bad times are coming. You might not ever see me again. And you need to know that after, you will hopefully survive, as she did. Remember, you don't have to look for somebody like me. Don't look for somebody with my level of knowledge, because it's going to be a different world and a different time. But at least, Chotch was a leg in tefillin. But at least look for somebody who at least puts on tefillin. Look for somebody who at least puts on tefillin. It was an amazing thing for a man who was a big Talmid Chacham, for him to make this point. Guys, you can, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but many people got many messages. And many people certainly knew all the rights and all the wrongs of Jewish life. And many people after the war said, you know what, I really don't care what my father or my mother or what God tells me to do. What I've seen has been so horrific and so damaging and so devastating, I don't really care. And I'm just moving on with my life. I'm going to do what I want to do. And many people after the war just heard different messages and just let it go. Unfortunately, some of them came back later and they regretted their attitude maybe 40, 50 years earlier. But the point is, those words resonated in her heart. She took them in. She used her power of seeing and her power of hearing and internalized that message. Rov v'loksumusur. And that allowed her to marry this incredible man with an incredible story who actually was a soldier of the U.S. Army who came to liberate the concentration camp. And amazingly, after many, many suitors, many of the boys who were in the camps wanted to marry her. She was a young girl, pretty girl. She survived the camps, and that's what people did. They just sort of met each other and they decided to get married. And she kept saying no because they didn't wear tefillin. And those words kept ringing in her mind. I can't marry you. You're not putting on tefillin. You don't need it. You're not meeting that standard. She lived with that message. She took it in. And she waited. And one day she walked into the dining area where she was serving breakfast one morning to the soldiers, and sure enough, she sees this fellow, Mel Cass, who had already introduced himself to her. And sure enough, what was he doing before breakfast? He was a U.S. soldier from Chicago, signed up for World War II to put his life on the line to defend this country. She sees him putting on tefillin. And she said, yeah, he's going to be the guy. And they have a generation and generations of children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren at this point. They're both in the next world, but they have left a legacy that's absolutely incredible. Because she held on to a concept. She looked so much, she took those words. Make sure he puts on tefillin. The power of seeing, the power of hearing, the power of taking in a message. We read at the end of the Parsha, Rabbi said, put on tzitzis, or isem also. So you should see that tzitzis. So we have tzitzis, hopefully. We all have tzitzis. Some of us have other excuses. But we can have tzitzis and see them 1,000 times a day. And just sort of, well, that's what we do. We wear tzitzis. Because Baruch was telling us, no. It's much deeper. If you internalize the mitzvah properly and you look at those tzitzis, you will not follow the ways of your heart. Tzitzis can be the factor of making a right decision versus a wrong one. Falling into a trap versus not falling into a trap. Tzitzis, come on, it's just on your body, whatever, it's there. No. That's the way it's supposed to be. Re'isem also. See. Internalize. Put it to your heart. This is a message, obviously very, very important for seniors who are now moving on their own new direction in life. And whether it's Eretz Yisrael or any place else, believe me, you can be in Eretz Yisrael and you can focus on the crowded buses or the gathering of seeds on the streets. Or you can focus on the fact that the mayonnaise is not quite the same as Hellman's or Best Foods. Or you can complain about who knows what. There's what to complain about everywhere and anywhere. Or you can take in the most incredible place on earth. And everywhere you go, Rabbi Sai, everything you do in the summer, go back to that same horrible black hole that some of us are looking forward to. It's a 12-week black hole. We don't even get out of our hole. All we're focused on is our Fortnites or our Ninjas or whatever else it is. But what are we going to see? What are we going to learn? One of the most famous Chafetz Chaim stories that happened to one of the branches of the yeshiva was a Dallas story, where a fellow goes to a Jew. Fellow goes to Eretz Yisrael, and he's standing at the kotel. And he sees another Jew praying. And he looks into that Jew's eyes, and the Jew does not know that he's there. He's just praying by the coastal. He's pouring his heart out to Kodesh Baruch Hu. He must have some, whatever it might be, some deep personal need, or maybe that's why he always davened. I don't know, but he was crying and he was pouring his heart out. And the Jew was watching this, and the Jew was being moved by this. And the Jew goes back to Dallas, Texas. One of these classic American guys with a big southern drawl and a big, Texas hat, cowboy hat. And he walks into a bakery and he says to the baker, give me, I wish I had a good accent. I don't have a good accent, but he says, tell me where I can see a real rabbi. I want to see a real rabbi. Where can I find a real rabbi here in Dallas, Texas? And he said, there's a yeshiva over there, there's a rabbi over there. There's actually a shul there. And he walks into the shul, and he walks into Rabbi Roden's office, a good buddy of ours, known for many years. And he walks to Rabbi Roden's office, and he says, I hear, you're a rabbi, you're a real rabbi, not one of those fake ones that we might have in some other places. You're a real rabbi. And he writes out a $10,000 check, which incredibly was exactly what they needed to finish the building campaign. At that time, it was a lot of money, more like $100,000 in those days. And he says he took his money and he thanked him profusely. He said, I just got to ask you. You don't know me. You don't know anything about us. What made you walk into this shul and give us a $10,000 check that will allow us to complete a new building, which now is part of a whole new complex of the yeshiva and the Beis Medrash, and amazing things are going on in Dallas, Texas. What motivated you? Because I saw a Jew pray. I saw his honesty, and I saw his sincerity. And I didn't have my head down, and I wasn't sleeping. I took it in. I took it all in, and I said to myself, what should I take away from this inspiring moment? Look how this Jew's davening. Look how this Jew is praying. He said, I have to do something. I have to make a difference. I was moved because I recognized that there's a truth in the world. I had a fellow come over to me. It's a scary thing because I have to figure out what to do next. I guess maybe I'll ask Charlie maybe what the response should be. But I spoke for just a few minutes on Monday night at the trustees' dinner. And a fellow who grew up as a Reformed Jew, married to a non-Jewish lady. And he came over to me after the speech, and he heard me he's a lawyer, he's a friend of the Rosenbergs, he's a lawyer, he's also a lawyer from some other people in the community. He said, I heard you at the banquet when we honored the Rosenbergs, he was there, and I heard you last night. And I'm thinking that I really regret having been raised a Reformed Jew. I regret that I didn't have the opportunity to learn about Torah, learn about God in the proper way. I guess we got to figure out what the next step is. The point is that people who listen, people who take in moments, people who are their neshamas are receptive to what's going on around them. Those are people who move, Rabbi Say. Those are people that they don't fall into the trap of the Meraglim. Those are people who, as the Gemara tells us, a man was about to engage in an illicit act with a woman of ill repute. And he was about to engage in that act, and his clothes were off, they were on the chair. And the Gemara tells us he was about to do the Aveira, and he looked up, and what did he see? He saw Sittis on the chair. And trust me, his passion was at the highest levels, and was about to engage in a terrible Aveira. And at that point, you'd say, there's no point of return. I'm fully invested in this. I'm going to do this. And he saw the Sittis on the chair. The Gemara tells us, Urisim also. He saw it. He didn't just gaze and glance at it. He didn't just sort of block everything out and say, talk to the hand, I'm not interested. He took it in. Right then and there, he says, what am I doing? He took his sittis, he took his shirt, and he took his pants, and he walked out of the room. That's how great a person could achieve, the greatness a person could achieve. If you're looking, if you're internalizing, if you're listening. But you have to be focused. It doesn't happen any other way. So I urge you beyond anything. This is not about today or tomorrow. This is a life issue. It's a life concept. As you go through life, and certainly as you go through the summer months, look, see, engage in what's going on around you in a proper way. Ask yourself, what am I doing? Where am I going? What is this about? Take in those moments of inspiration. If it's something that it's new and novel and you know it might open up your eyes, take it in. Be curious. But don't be those people literally with blinders on who can't appreciate what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presenting to them. You don't want to be that guy. So Bez Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless all of us with an incredible summer, an incredible future, Bez Hashem, and that's what's going to be